Recently, while I was at work, I was explaining our channel here to one of my coworkers, and I explained to him that we strive to discover what we would see if we went back in time in a time machine and saw the events of Jesus' ministry with our own eyes. And that brought up a question from my coworker, which was, how would you know where to go? And as the night went on, I thought about it some more and arrived at the conclusion that it would be extremely difficult to use your time machine to go back exactly where you want, to the time that you wanted to see. And so I came up with the idea for a series of shorts in which we proposed that you would have a time machine and 24 hours. Okay, because of course anybody could do it if you could go back to the very start of the time period and just sit there for 40 years. You would certainly be able to eventually hunt these things down. So we only have it for 24 hours, and you have to set the date, location, and time. You'd have to go back to a particular spot, and could you actually find Jesus using that methodology? So I asked a bunch of people if they had the time machine, would they be able to go and find Jesus? And if so, where would they go? And I took the top 3 answers and made shorts briefly outlining why this is a good or is not a good idea. The top 3 answers were 1, Jerusalem, 2, the Galilee, and 3, Bethlehem. So I briefly, as much as you could do in 30 seconds, outlined why these were problematic choices. And then finally, I outlined my own, what I would do, which I still believe would give people the best chance of actually finding Jesus and be able to talk to him. So anyway, because you can't say too much in 30 seconds, I decided today I record a little bit longer video in which we go through each of those choices and flesh it out just a little bit more, and maybe add some information as to why that particular choice would not bear fruit, especially given the constraint of only having 24 hours. To find Jesus in the time machine, many people say they would start at the Jerusalem temple. Honestly, so would I, but there's a problem. Jesus is probably there when everyone else is as well. Jerusalem could swell to hundreds of thousands of pilgrims. You have one day, no photograph, no idea what Jesus looks like. Could you really find one Galilean in a city overflowing with people? Would you choose Jerusalem, or is there a better strategy? Jerusalem is actually the top answer that people come up with, and it makes sense. The most popular parts of Christianity, that is the Passion Week and crucifixion, both take place in Jerusalem. And it makes sense that that would be somewhere where people will go. After all, the temple is there, and as a Jewish person, he would be a pilgrim to the temple often. But there's a problem with this. Number one, the road to Jerusalem from Jesus' home in Nazareth requires a traveling distance of 90 miles on foot. Okay, so they're not going there often. This is not a weekend thing. They don't go very often. 90 miles on foot, several days of journey each direction. If we, looking at the Synoptic Gospels, we can only really place him in Jerusalem 3 times. Okay, a couple times as a kid, and once the final time. John adds a bunch of visits, but historians usually stick with the Synoptic Gospels. In either case, he's not there very often. And with the exception of when he was 12 years old, because we're not, when he's there, he's probably there with everybody else, all the other Jewish people, because they tend to return to the temple for certain festivals and certain times in the year. And so the population of Jerusalem swells by a factor of 10. You could be looking for one Galilean, one Jewish man, and a sea of 500,000 people. Keep in mind, you have no idea what Jesus looks like. I'm sure you have a picture of him in your head, but it's probably wrong. Okay, he probably looks European, like popular art always depicts him, but he wasn't. Okay, he would blend in. He wasn't, nobody describes him in any of the, in anywhere. So of course we can assume from that there was nothing special about his appearance, so he would have blended in with everyone else. So you're walking around a crowd of 500,000 people just yelling his name in English, I'm sure, and it's just not going to work. However, there is a chance that if you got the year correct, which most people don't, you may be able to grab him at the crucifixion, but that might not be the best time to approach him. I think that he would find himself a bit distracted, and you probably wouldn't have any meaningful interactions with him. And you may not have even been allowed to get close to him, because they're not going to let you, possibly help him escape or whatnot. So that, I guess if you wanted to see him die, you may be able to do that. But again, all the other events, there is some historical doubt too as to whether all the events of Jesus in Jerusalem in the Synoptic Gospels are described happening in the last week of his life. But there is some reason to doubt that. And there are some who propose that the Passion Week is actually the previous year condensed into a more, action-packed week. We'll go over that one day in a later video, but again, yeah, you're going to be looking for a needle in a stack of needles. Galilee sounds like the perfect place to find Jesus, until you realize one thing. Galilee wasn't a town. It was a region home to roughly 250,000 people spread across an area about the size of the state of Delaware. Jesus could be in Nazareth, Cana, Capernaum, or somewhere else entirely. Choosing Galilee is like choosing an entire state instead of a particular address. You have only 24 hours. Mission failed. Think smaller. Where would you check next? Galilee is another popular answer, since we know that Jesus was Galilean. And we often have this picture of, Jesus' world as being a quaint, pastoral living, small little stone houses and wandering around preaching, but it wasn't. The Galilee in Jesus' day contained 250,000 people. Okay, 250,000 people. And just a ton of different towns. I mean, you would have to search Cana, Nazareth, Capernaum, Sepphoris. You have a time machine and not a car. Okay, and the Galilee is roughly the size of the state of Delaware. All right, so you're not going to all those places on foot in 24 hours. At whatever time you picked, you would also have to find somewhere in the state of Delaware that within maybe 10 miles of where he actually is. And I think we don't have enough detail to actually nail him down to a certain place at a certain time if we're just going to check the Galilee. As I said in the shorts, it's like searching for somebody or mailing a package to somebody in a state without an address. They're not even going to try, because there's just no way to do it. So Galilee is out, or just the Galilee is out. We would have to get far more specific. If you had one trip in a time machine to find Jesus, would Bethlehem be a good target? Bethlehem seems like the obvious choice. After all, that's where he was born. There's just one problem. Even if that were correct, Jesus was only in Bethlehem for a very short time. Soon after his birth, the family left and eventually settled in Nazareth. Not to mention the fact that we have no idea the actual date of his birth. He would likely be far too late. Mission failed. Think longer. Where would you check next? Finally, we come to Bethlehem. Now, sadly, I'm just going to say it up front, Bethlehem is going to turn out to be the least likely of the places you would find Jesus. And I'm not a statistician, but I'm positive that a statistician would back up my assertions. The first couple reasons is, let's pretend for a second we're just going to assume that Jesus was born on December 25th and he was born in Bethlehem. Okay, we doubt both of those things, but let's just assume. The vast majority of people are going to go back to the year, well, they'll try to go back to 0 AD, which there was no year 0. So you would have to go to 1 CE or AD. But you would be wrong. The Jesus family would have already left Bethlehem, again, provided that they were ever there in the first place, and have been gone for many years. Okay, we know, if the Gospels are to be believed, Jesus was born during the reign of Herod the Great. Herod was a puppet ruler of the Romans, and so the Romans had hands in choosing the next king and everything else, and so they recorded the death of Herod the Great. As remember, Herod the Great's sons were sent to be in the emperor's household. I mean, they were very tight. And the Romans put Herod's death at 4 BCE. Okay, so now if Jesus is born during the reign of Herod the Great and Herod died in 4 BC, the latest Jesus could have been born is 4 BCE, which means that historians generally date his birth between 6 BC and 4 BC. Okay, so if you arrived at 1 CE or AD, you are way too late, and they are already in Nazareth. Okay, so that alone is going to foul up most people's plans. Also, I don't know why you would want to go see baby Jesus, because there can be no meaningful interactions, and you may end up getting hurt, because just like modern day parents, if some weirdo wanders up and wants to hold the baby and starts crying holding the baby, the mother's not going to let you sit there and do that, and you run the risk of Joseph beating your ass. Okay, but let's, maybe people want to see baby Jesus. The other problem is, we only have 2 sources on earth that place Jesus being born in Bethlehem. Only 2, Matthew and Luke. But they don't even agree. They each find a different reason that Jesus is born in Bethlehem. Every other source puts him being from Nazareth, and it makes a lot more sense that he's born in Nazareth. This whole idea of a census, it just doesn't exist. There's no census in the time where Jesus was born. The closest census that would be had, Jesus was already probably 12 years old. Okay, so that census is one that was invented for the story, and we know that they're not native to Bethlehem. They weren't living there to begin with, so we don't believe that he was born in Bethlehem. And you can't, some people would think, well, I go to Bethlehem, but if he's not there, you go to Bethlehem and you're, 6 years off, you'll just go to Nazareth, but you're not going to make it. Okay, and Nazareth is 90 miles away from Bethlehem. Okay, adding to the reasons against Mary at 9 months pregnant traveling 90 miles for a census. You're in a time machine, but it's not a car. Okay, so there's no way you're closing that 90-mile gap in one day. Also, finally, we have no idea what day Jesus was born on. Okay, December 25th was a date that was made official by the council, but previous church fathers had arrived at from studying the New Testament. But I would caution you about their findings, because these are the same people that got his birth year wrong by up to 6 years. We do have a hint in Luke, I believe it's Luke 2:8, that has the shepherds watching their flocks at nighttime, which is, according to historians that deal with shepherding in that area, that's usually done during the spring lambing season. So that's a hint that quite possibly Jesus was born in the spring, but we just don't know. You have a 1 in 365 chance of nailing that date. Okay, so that one's going to be a bust. You would, if you wanted to have any hope, I believe you would have to go to Nazareth. I would go at 4 BCE. That way, just to be certain that at worst case scenario, you would run into 2-year-old Jesus. But again, we don't know the date, so this one's probably not going to work for us. You only get one trip in a time machine. After eliminating Jerusalem, Galilee, and Bethlehem, where would you go? I'd set the time machine for the road coming into Nazareth from Sepphoris, Friday, February 1st, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 25 CE. Why? Because Jesus would be returning home from work before the start of the Sabbath at sundown. If we missed him, we could check his synagogue the next morning. Instead of searching an entire region or a crowded city, you've narrowed your search to a small village of only a few hundred people. No one can know for certain, but this is the first destination that gives us a realistic chance. So the top 3 answers are all wrong. And I can hear you thinking, okay, Mr. Smarty Pants, where would you go if you're so smart? You're probably thinking that. Well, let's look at it. First of all, it's probably going to be too difficult to find Jesus during his ministry years. So whether as part of John the Baptist's ministry or his own, both of those ministries had one thing in common, and that is they were nomadic. Okay, John the Baptist especially was known for preaching at crossroads and rivers and whatnot. And Jesus' own ministry, we could see he was wandering around the countryside quite a bit. The Synoptic Gospels, or the Gospels in general, none of them are history books. None of them are very good at all for like building a distinct timeline of what happened when. So we can't really rely on them with enough specificity to nail down a date and time when we can actually find Jesus. So if you want to see him and maybe even have somewhat of a meaningful interaction with him, provided you speak Aramaic or maybe Hebrew to a certain level, we would have to find him during his working years. Okay, so I'm setting my time machine for about the year 25 CE. Okay, Joseph is probably gone by now. We don't hear any more about Joseph after Jesus' presentation or appearance at the temple at the age of 12. So we're assuming he died. By 25 CE, he's probably working to support his family, to support his mother. I'm sure his brothers are helping as well. Now, Nazareth is a tiny town, or village even, with just a couple hundred people in it. So Jesus being tekton, okay, which means builder, not necessarily carpenter, but builder, there's not enough work in a village of 200 people, with maybe 50 households, to keep him employed all the time. But 4 miles away, there is a booming metropolis that is being rebuilt. It's called Sepphoris. So Jesus would be traveling to Sepphoris every day to ply his trade. I would set my time machine location just outside of Nazareth on the road coming in from Sepphoris. And I would set it on a Friday, I believe it was February 2nd, at about 3 p.m. Okay, now why that particular time and date? Well, there is one time a week we can be guaranteed that a Jewish man in the first century will not be at work, because it would be difficult to find him in Sepphoris. That's a booming city. He would have to be home by the start of the Sabbath. Now the Sabbath begins Friday night at sundown, which means that Jesus would be coming back from work in order to be home before the sun finally set. So my hope would be that as he comes into Nazareth, we'd be able to catch him and talk to him. However, there's a chance that maybe I miss him, or maybe he went home earlier. We're not exactly certain of his Friday ritual. Maybe he didn't go to work at all on Friday. We don't know. So in that case, if I missed him in the afternoon, since I have 24 hours, I would go to their local synagogue, where we know he would gather with everyone else on the Sabbath. And I would have a much better chance of finding him either on the road coming into town or at the synagogue on the Sabbath in his town of Nazareth. This would be just prior to his ministry, so we could see a developed adult Jesus and get a chance to talk to him and understand him before he embarked on his ministries. That's where I would set my time machine. And I do believe that out of all these choices, this has the highest chance for success. All right, thanks for joining me in our little experiment here. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button and give us a like if you made it this far. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, goodbye.